Hey everyone, and welcome to my show. My name is Nick Elston. I'm a leading inspirational speaker, creator of unique mental health engagement strategies, a transformational speaking coach, and founder of Forging People, a community created to empower, inspire, and educate people who truly want to be heard in life and in business. On these shows, I bring you the storytellers, celebrities, speakers, influencers, entrepreneurs, those who have gone from adversity to excitement, who share their stories with vulnerability, transparency, inspiration, and most importantly, completely unfiltered. So without any further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode of The Nick Elston Show. Hey everyone, a big welcome back to The Nick Elston Show, and it's season 3, episode 5, time is flying, and another very exciting, amazing guest to bring you today. As you know, it really follows the theme of the show to bring you people that talk with authenticity and vulnerability, and this guy is up there with the best of them that I've ever met. And genuinely, I'm not saying that because he's on the screen in front of me right now, genuinely, we've actually only crossed paths a couple of times, but he has made that big an impression on me. So we did cross paths through our work in the Next Gen Planners community. We both won jointly an award for Wellbeing Advisor of the Year, which is really cool. Not won an award since I won a swimming certificate when I was a kid, so that was pretty cool. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause for Steve Nelson. Steve!
Hey, mate. What an introduction. It does... It's the first time I think I've had a round of applause first thing. Working in financial services for like 18 years, you know.
I think it's massively underrated on Zoom. I do these at the speaking academies that I run. In the very least, you just get your energy up a bit. It's good. Steve, tell us who you are and what you do.
So I'm Steve Nelson, Insight Director for a small but noisy consultancy up in Edinburgh, based in Leith actually, which is famous for train spotting and the Proclaimers. And
claim to fame.
In third place is the Landcat, which is a silly name. It's got nothing to do with financial services. It's the song lyrics that the boss likes from a guy called James Yorkston from Fife. But yeah, we're a platform pension investment consultancy. You do our own research and stuff like that. But I guess the reason I'm on today is that for the past 2-3 years or so, that there's been like a bizarre chain of events where I've turned into someone who speaks publicly about mental health and well-being, and a bit like yourself, my lived experience of it. One of those things where if you told me this, 5-10 years ago, I'd have thought, what are you talking about? But here we are. That's just a little bit about me. I've been in the
right. Where do we go from here? These rabbit holes just pop up. I don't know what to talk about. So, okay, actually, let's start with, you mentioned Landcat. Now, it's the name of the business. It really did stand out for me because it made no sense whatsoever. And that really does fit my kind of style. So tell us a little bit more about the Landcat. So they come from a lyric, is that right?
Yeah, so it's my boss, Mark Paulson, relatively well-known chap within financial services. So he'd done the rounds in corporate life, worked for Scottish Life, Royal London, bit of work at Aviva, Standard Life, and just got to the point in his life where I guess like many people think, I want to try something different. So he went out on his own, set up his own consultancy called the Landcat, which is it's either the name of a song or it's a song lyric, I forget what, or it's the name of an EP or something, by a Fife folk singer by the name of James Yorkston. And I guess you never know how life's going to pan out, but maybe back then 11 years ago, did he think that it would be a mainstream name within financial services? Would he have called it something different? I don't know.
Is there actually a cat involved in this, or literally is this kind of like a mythology kind of thing going on?
I don't know. So I think there's a cat. It's obviously Scots for long, so it's a particularly long cat. And it is on the album sleeve, I think. I don't know. I'd really see before. There's a lesson here for me, Nick, that I should become more familiar with origin stories
It's
before appearing on podcasts.
well, it's a really weird link actually, because there seems to be. I've had quite a few people from the financial planning and financial services community come on over the course of the 3 seasons. There does seem to be a weird link between cats and financial planning. The one that springs to mind is Gretchen Betts. She was talking about her cats, and I believe you know Gretchen as well.
Yeah.
So there certainly is a link between cats and financial planning, probably for another show, but we'll leave it at that. The other thing I wanted to pick up on was this kind of, how did you get into this world? The phrase that I've heard most over the years, kind of like me and how I fell into your world really, is falling in. People fall into financial services, they fall into accountancy. How did you fall into this world?
It's the biggest cliche in certainly in Edinburgh, because it's the biggest employer by a mile.
Okay.
But in Edinburgh, that you're walking, you're a student, you graduate, and then you're walking up Princes Street one day, you get a whack to the head, and you wake up in a service centre at Scottish Widows or something, But well, I did computer science and artificial intelligence at uni, and I was no good at it. It was one of those things where I was good at that kind of thing at school, and I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I almost felt too young to leave school, too immature. I was always jealous of friends who had, a vocation in mind. I want to be a vet, or I want to be a, even daydream type stuff like footballer and things like that. I had no great burning ambition for a certain type of career. I just liked studying, and I liked, being with friends and that kind of thing. So I just did what I was good at school. And then it got to a point at Edinburgh Uni where I suddenly wasn't good at it anymore because I didn't have the passion for it. So I kind of stumbled my way through quite a average degree, really, with a lot of debt. Too late to really change my mind and do something else. And then I got the first job that came along to pay the bills, and that was a 6-month custodial sentence at Aegon, which it was fine. It just wasn't the best job in the world, but they're a great company. But they put me through my financial planning certificate at the time, which gave me the qualifications I needed to get a graduate job in Scottish Life in marketing. And I did the rounds there for 8 or 9 years, junior analyst, senior analyst, and then I was running a little team. And then I got divorced in 2012, or separated in 2012 anyway. And then the job at the Lancat came up, and it was just a particular moment in time, particular window in time where I think if it had been before or after, that I maybe wouldn't have pursued it. But it was just perfect timing. I'll never have another opportunity where I can take a risk like this, to join Mark, who at the time I was his first full-time employee. We've now got 20. But this was 9 years ago, 8 years ago now. And then the rest is history, I guess.
Synchronicity rocks. I love it. There's some real sliding doors moment, I think, when we all look back. And I think even very much like yourself, I've been through divorce and stuff. And I think even when you look back, it's sometimes the kind of adversities, those darkest times actually do contribute to forging a better way forward. You just don't see it at the time. And I love that. And I think there's something to that. And it's a real common thread through the storytellers, the people that come on and share their own either lived experience or share their own view on the world or perspective, and I've have a real eclectic mix of people who not only listen and tune into the show, but also come on as well. So last week we had one of the directors of Bristol Rovers Football Club. So he was talking about the pressures of running a currently struggling football club, suffering relegation, toxicity from social media and the fans, that kind of stuff. And even with that, he was saying the common thread is he knows that these experiences, actually, as harsh and brutal as they are, they will teach lessons so that we shape a better way forward ongoing. I think that I love that. And I think the people like you and like me and like many people that have been on the show, without those experiences, we wouldn't be able to step up and share other things that could inspire or engage or empower other people to save them having to go through those experiences. So I'm guessing before you got to the stage where you stepped up to speak about your stuff, and we'll talk about your stuff very shortly, what was kind of your first experiences with kind of maybe experiencing poor mental health or indeed mental illness?
So my first real experience, Nick, would have been, and I didn't know it at the time, right? Because I was a 20-year-old, 20-year-old guy with no real peers to talk about this thing, stereotypical, friendship group. I was hiding it, and I look back on a couple of my friends, and I know that, looking back now, I know they'd have been hiding stuff back then, but we just didn't have the kind of relationships I do now. But it was at university, where I was really starting to struggle with being out of my depth, no real support via university, partly because I didn't look for it myself. And, you look back on things and you think, what could I have done? Could I have taken more responsibility? But I remember missing the first day of a new term and missing out on the first introductions with new classes. I don't know if I can't really remember why, but I don't know if I was slightly ill at the time or a little bit of a bug or something, whatever. But I missed the first day, and then I didn't go in the next day. And then the combination of that and feeling out of my depth and starting to fall behind, that just escalated into a ridiculous situation with anxiety where I didn't go to university for at least, I want to say, 2 months, maybe even longer.
Wow.
Spiraling out of control, feeling, God, I'm going to fail this, and I have no means to reinsert myself and get back on the train. I was still going out, 1 or 2 nights a week and seeing friends and going to see gigs and going to the pub, not in a dysfunctional way. I was, living I was being a character and pretending everything was okay. And I maybe that saved me to a certain extent, from getting even worse. But it was just so dysfunctional looking back. But I didn't realize at the time. And I didn't realize for years.
So was it a case of, if you didn't realize what was going on, did you not look for any support or solutions at the time, either through the university or externally?
I put everything down to being circumstantial, to being a problem with the situation rather than me being ill. Like, I can say with 100% honesty, at no point, it just wasn't part of the paradigm of conversation for a 20-year-old working class guy from Fife at the time, with my upbringing, with my friendship group. At no point would I have held a conversation, or even the notion entered my head that someone like me could be depressed,
so that's
or anxious. Like,
exactly. I mean, that's huge. I mean, I've spoken to lots of different people that say that, I guess, mental health and mental illness absolutely is one of those, or a couple of those things that affect our sense of belonging, that we don't feel that we can aspire to be any better or achieve any more. It can keep us in our kind of comfort zones. And actually, you've hit on two there, actually, culturally, like you said, but also gender as well plays a huge part. I think very much like yourself, man up, stiff upper lip, that kind of narrative, which wasn't done with any cruelty or intent, but it kind of conditions us that we don't talk about our shit, and that's it. We kind of carry on, we carry that kind of stuff. That plays a huge kind of, I guess, conditioning element in how we approach the times when we do struggle. I guess combined with potentially a lack of awareness that may be what you were experiencing at the time. So if that was your kind of your first realization that something wasn't right looking back, when do you feel the first time was that you actually realized that there could be something bigger at play here?
I'm going to position myself as a bit of an idiot here, Nick, because honestly, it's only really recently that I've started to talk about this in public and start to make sense of my own background and my own story, that I've looked back on my life. And do you know, the funny thing is, one of my favorite people in the world is Derren Brown.
Okay, yep.
Not because I do like his stage show and I like his stuff, but also I love some of the stuff he talks about behind the scenes and some of the stuff in his book.
That Happy.
Happy, oh, it's an amazing book, wonderful
Great book. Yeah, I've read that. Really, really good.
But he talks a lot about, you can become entrenched in the story that you tell yourself about yourself, and that in many instances people don't realize that they have the power to change that. And this is a very long-winded way of saying I'd convinced myself that I was an introvert, right? And that I kind of liked being on my own, and that I wasn't very sociable, or I didn't like parties and stuff like that. And it's only really now, and some of the stuff I've done with the Landcat and the presenting and being on stage speaking, that I realize I actually love doing this kind of thing. And that, I've actually got something within me that's quite anxious, or I have a predisposition to being down now and again if I don't look after myself. And to some degree that's quite disappointing to find out when you're just turning 40. But
oh, better now than never. Well, I'm 3 years ahead of you, so
better now than never. Yeah, but
I think
genuinely recently.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think you're an idiot at all. I think that actually that makes complete sense to me. I absolutely relate to that. You touched on some really fascinating things. I think I've certainly noticed through the Speaking Academy sessions for sure that there is a really fine line between owning your story and your story owning you. Absolutely. And therefore, if that's the case, then we can change our narrative to create something different. And that's been a huge part in my own recovery. And I know from what you're saying, obviously it has been for you and a lot of other guests we've had on the show as well. But it is also interesting that the stories of others can also condition and influence us as well. So the work that I've done in the prison system reform and care leavers and stuff, but it's interesting when you ask people to do these kind of exercises around telling stories that they very rarely tell their own stories. They tell the stories of the people that they've influenced or the people that have influenced them. And it's a really interesting one. Therefore, we can then be, I guess, conditioned by, well, we all are conditioned by our environment, but we can get conditioned very easily by these stories. Always remember being on a panel event with a psychologist, like people that actually know what they're doing. And she said to me that this kind of power of narrative, she said, if you talk to yourself and you say to yourself, I am rubbish in the first person, in your own words, then yeah, absolutely, that's you. That's your own confidence maybe, or that's your own challenge. But most of the time we will speak to ourselves in the third person. You are rubbish. You are not worthy. You are not loved. And she said the really fascinating thing about that is that somebody else has told you that enough or strong enough for it to become your own conditioning. And that blew my head. It's kind of like we can be conditioned by other people. And you kind of see that, I guess, the people that are in toxic relationships, that are in that kind of spiral, like you said, of things like depression and stuff. So stories play a huge part. Your ability and how you've stood up to tell your story, has that kind of released you then in that way?
It has, yeah. I feel it has. I feel kind of like it's, I don't want to exaggerate here, Nick, but it almost feels like a different phase of my life where,
Get that?
It's not like I've led a bad life or an unhappy life. A very fulfilling 20s and 30s, decent career. Even with getting divorced, it was traumatic at the time, but I don't look back on that and go, what a waste of time or anything like that. But it does feel like, it's a step closer to being just your true self. And I think it's quite, one of the things I love about working at the Landcat, right, is I don't want to make this about the company, but it's our tone of voice is so direct and it's so straightforward. Because everybody, whether you're a parent, if you're a parent, you put on your parent hat. And if you go to work, you put on your work hat, and you play all these different roles in your life. And there's a thing about the Landcat where we're very, very, very close most of the time to our true selves.
Yeah.
which is what I love being there. But with the mental health stuff and talking about it and finding a community as well of people, that's one thing I would say is that, it's not just me. There's a handful of people in financial services who are now talking about this thing. But God, you'd better believe there's like a secret society behind the scenes, that we're building of people who've been through stuff, whether it's, mainstream names, journalists, heads of function, all the way through to all the different roles have come forward and said, God, it's great that you're doing this because, I can make sense of this. And, so I do feel like it's been a bit of, if I was American, right, because I'd be saying, God, it's been a real awakening, and I've really found myself. But I still feel that that working class fifer in me going, shut up, But I do feel like it is a new phase.
I get that, absolutely, and you're right. You still do get that inner voice, and even lead into imposter syndrome. That's certainly something that is a constant challenge, we say. But you are right. And certainly, I think when I deliver to like US audiences, there's much more of an openness to be really kind of expressive and vulnerable, maybe even too much the other way in a lot of ways, weirdly. But in the UK, there is a challenge for sure of, well, not only of believing that things like self-care is selfish, that we feel guilty when we put ourselves before anything or anyone, but when we start to be open about these things, what we don't realize is the vulnerability actually could be the biggest superpower we have if we use it in the right way. And like you said, you are changing your industry from telling a story. It's something that I'm heading up your way tomorrow, up to Glasgow to do a talk. But one of those things that I'm talking about is emotional leading. Actually, how we can start to use our emotions, and what we're doing here, talking openly as two men who've experienced mental health challenges, how we can use that to actually boost our credibility as a leader. And that's huge. I think if we look at it from that point of view, when it comes to that kind of awakening bit, I get that. And it kind of really resonated when you said that, because I did my first in-person event since like March 2020, a couple of weeks ago, and being in front of a live audience again. And it is the closest thing to euphoria I ever feel, is riffing with a live audience, and kind of what to say and what not to say. And you start to play around with it. I love that. And it does feel that kind of way. So I do feel that vibe.
Now, it's interesting. It's given me a confidence that I've never had before either. It's not like it's not like Saturday Night Fever, like I'm strutting down the road or anything. But I do feel like, for example, like I'm in therapy just now, right? And it's been genuinely one of the best experiences of my life. Now, I would never, ever have come on a podcast or sat inside an office or said to friends 10, 15 years ago, I'm going to see a therapist, because I would have felt this absurd. And it's really fascinating how much of this is cultural and how much of it is a British or Scottish thing. But there must be an element of that in terms of self-care. But God, it's magnificent. I want to tell everybody how
do it. Absolutely do
how fun it is
and
as well.
I can absolutely see you in that white suit with the big collars and everything else dancing down the street. That'd be really cool. But you're right. If I say to a UK audience that, and like you, I'm very open that every Friday that's my counselling time. I have therapy every Friday, and they're kind of like, he said what? This guy's a freak, kind of thing. If I say that to a US audience, so does everybody else. Move over, big beardy boy, kind of things. And it's really interesting, that dynamic shift. But I think it's only through talking about it do we start to, I know it's kind of a really overused term, but you do reduce the stigma around it. You do tackle that taboo head on, that actually, even if you're feeling well, talking therapy is actually a really powerful thing. And the more, I certainly think the more that you work in the mental health arena generally, because that's kind of where I live all week, I need that space. As a non-solution focused person working in the mental health arena, it's heavy because you have lots of heavy conversations. So I need my kind of safe space to go to and talk about that stuff as well. So I absolutely get that. Are you truly being heard in life, in education, in business? Your ability to deliver any message with clarity, power and emotion will have an ultimately defining impact on your success, personally and professionally. Forging People, founded by Nick Elston, is an online community developed to empower, inspire, engage and educate you to truly step up. Complete with online courses, early access to in-person coaching and events, free resources and a community of like-minded people, Forging People will help you manage anxiety, boost confidence and give you the tools to speak to any audience, whether it's one person or 1 million people. Speaking is more than just standing on stage. Speaking is business. Speaking is leadership. Speaking is influencing. Speaking is life. Contact Nick's team today on pa@nickelston.com or visit nickelston.com today to register your interest. This is the sign you've been looking for. Now, one thing you have been really open about, and I was on your amazing podcast a few weeks ago. Love that, by the way. Really, really, really cool. And I'll pop the link in the bio so that you can check out and subscribe and follow to the podcast of Steve's as well. Now, you have recently taken a step back again. I think you've been very open about this. So I hope I'm okay in saying this. That you were not feeling it again. I think those things were coming up. Tell us about that. Again, maybe from a self-awareness point of view, and actually how you decided to take that step back and why you're back today, for example.
So let's go back to lockdown 1.0. I'm not going to say I had the time of my life, right, with the first lockdown, but we had a great spring up here in Scotland. The weather was great. We've got a little girl called Eva who's just about to turn 2. Because I've got 4 kids in total, I know, and I'm building a 5-a-side team.
Yeah, you've not got a TV, it's cheaper.
She's about to turn 2, and I had, the most amazing bond with Eva, because I would normally be in the office, God knows how many hours, and then traveling to do various business development type things all over the country. That just got taken away, so I was in the house all the time. I took up running, took up tennis. I felt really healthy by and large. So I'm not going to, in the spectrum of who had a good pandemic originally, I'm not going to say it was enjoyable, but in terms of my own health and well-being, it was pretty good, really. But I've found as times wore on, particularly from winter last year, I've ignored all of my own advice, all of my own, tools and techniques. My self-awareness was just chipped away and chipped away and chipped away. And it's like that really tired analogy of boiling a frog. You just don't, or I didn't realize that I was just getting 1% worse every day. Work was getting on top of me. When things get bad for me, I don't sit, unhappy or sad, so to speak. I get foggy. I get like I can't process basic things. It'd be like, I've always been known within my career as being good at analysis and numerical stuff and spreadsheet analysis. It'd be like, Roger Federer picking up a tennis racket one day and not being able to swing it, even though he's healthy. Like, he knows what to do, but I was looking at things like spreadsheets and going, I just can't. And it's the hardest thing to explain to someone, to say, I'm walking in a line, I could run down the street, I could present as a healthy, happy person, but I just can't do this. And it reached a crescendo, Nick, in July. It's when the Euros were on. And I just couldn't do any work, and I couldn't sleep either, because I was just constantly buzzing with thoughts and worries and anxiety. And I just reached a crunch point where I wrote to the rest of the management team of the Lancat at 4 o'clock in the morning, or 3:30 or whatever. Said, look, I'm not in a great place here. I need a bit of help. And fair play to them. They were magnificent. Each and every one of them were absolutely magnificent. And, had some time off, ended up being off for something like 7 or 8 weeks in total, might have even been longer, actually. And that's, I guess we've talked about phases of life here, but I think that's really, it's the first time I've been to therapy. And I think it's the first real acknowledgement, even though I've now been speaking about mental ill health for, 2 or 3 years now in public. I think it's the first time I'm really starting to make sense of what's going on. And that I had that period of university where I ended up being on the couch for 7 or 8 weeks. I had the divorce where, I'd lost a couple of family members not that long before. I was struggling at work. Both of those times I'd defined in my own head as being circumstantial or as being physical. Even though it was a mental health issue, it was still physical. Still, things were happening to me. Therefore, I was feeling like I was feeling. This was the first time I was really starting to think, do you know what? This is within you, and that there could be nothing. I've got a great life. I've got a great relationship. I've got great company. Life's. I've practically won the life lottery, right? I've got great kids, great colleagues. But if I don't look after myself, or if things start to go wrong, this is within me. I think the technical term is endogenous depression, which for the first time I've started talking about that to medical professionals. I need to be more on top of this. I need to do as much as I can to take responsibility for myself. And that's not me saying that, I'm not the guy who says you can do yoga to, you can get rid of psychosis by doing yoga. You know what I mean? I'm not, you can't exercise your way to well-being all of the time. But what is the best strategy for my condition and my life to get me on the straight and narrow? And that might be a mixture of therapy. It might be, more of an awareness of connecting with people. It might be this, it might be that, it might be this, but I finally feel like I've got a good chance of being in control of this.
Absolutely. Wow.
Which is cool. And it feels, I hasten to say it feels kind of good. And I'm almost glad that it's happened. I'm 40 now, and it feels like it's about time, but it feels like it's the next, it's the next chapter where I feel like I've got a good shot at dealing with this a bit better, and maybe avoiding episode number 4. might just be a day off or a couple of days off or something different,
Thank you so much, Steve. Really appreciate you sharing that. And I think certainly the lockdown, that was a very common thing from kind of audiences, that lockdown 1 was tough, but actually pretty much everybody just cracked on. Lockdown 2 was a little bit tougher, but kind of acceptable. Lockdown 3 was an interesting one. I think that was going into the Christmas period. I thought, right, okay, we'll see the rest of the year out, and then we'll all get cracking again from January. Lockdown 4 was brutal in every sense, because I think also it came at that time of the year where we were all singing Auld Lang Syne and hoping for a positive new year. We set our resolutions. It's a very exciting time of the year for a lot of people, fresh start. And suddenly we're back into kind of lockdown again. And it was tough. I think it was really brutal. Weirdly, I had the opposite experience to you over my life. I always believed I was an extrovert, and actually I was an introvert. So as much as I love what I do, whether it's kind of on stage or on here or whatever that may be, I recharge in my own company. So that was the bit that I was missing. That one of the definitions of an introvert that I like is that you recharge in your own company. An extrovert recharges in the company of others. So actually the bit I was missing was being in front of everybody, giving it everything, then being in front of everybody else as well, doing the family quiz on Zoom, that kind of stuff. I'm actually running on fumes right now, kind of thing. So as you say, self-awareness is key. But on a day-to-day basis, what's your playbook? What are the things that are really good for you, whether it be PlayStation, movies, walking? It doesn't have to be something which is like lighting a joystick and running around a field or something. What do you love to do? What really kind of lights your soul?
I'm making a mental note to not tell the joystick story, but no. So what makes me happiest right now are 2 things. One is tennis, where I've been a tennis fan all my life, and I played when I was a kid. I was never very good, but watched Andy Murray's career from start to finish. Well, hopefully not finished yet, but all the way through. He's taken years off my life, though, with sheer stress. But I've always loved it. And we moved to a small village in the east coast of Scotland about 4 years ago, and didn't realise it had a tennis club, a really cheap tennis club as well, which is as rare as hen's teeth in Britain. And it's just a nice family thing, and I go to a course every Wednesday night called Adult Improvers, which is just a nice way of connecting with people. And one of the things talking about with a therapist every week is the different things that we all need in some form of balance, to be able to function as well as possible. And tennis for me ticks 3 of them, where it's physical exercise. It's something I love doing as well. So it's not just pounding the streets, which I don't like running. I've had various attempts at running and just realised I hate it, so I'm not going to try anymore. But I like tennis. I love playing it, but also connects with people as well. So I do get a lot out of that. And the other thing is, I notice you've got a guitar on your wall there. I've had 2 attempts at learning guitar, which were aborted because I made all the mistakes that you people make. I downloaded all my favorite music and got frustrated. Why can I not play this immediately? Or did it for hours on end till I got too sore and then gave it up, and all these kind of things. So I'm doing an online course, a 14-week course where you play for 15 minutes to half an hour a day. And I get so much out of that. I can feel the progress. I can feel there's almost like a meditation element of doing these repetitive things, and you start to feel better about yourself because you're learning things and that kind of stuff. So those are my 2 things that don't involve work. They don't involve family. They don't involve anything other than just me feeling better about myself. So big lesson there to keep going on with that.
Yeah, really cool. I need to take that advice as well, because like you, I got very sore and very frustrated that I couldn't play my favorite country track straight away. So I do need to pick that up. But you're quite right, actually. It does give you a focus, which isn't work, it isn't home, it isn't anything else other than you and this. And I think there's also that element of learning as well. So you got the creativity, haven't you? And then you got the learning that, the last time I learned anything was probably school, to be fair. So it's nice to have that kind of feeling like you're learning something too. Yeah, I like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, I've also taken things like Twitter off my phone. I've taken, I used to play a lot of games growing up, like computer games and stuff, and I've not been able to get away from it in my adult life. But so many games these days, particularly on smartphones, there's no end point.
Yeah,
it's just like constant search for dopamine and search for new things and new things and new things. There's no beginning, middle, and end. So anytime I feel that itch of, I'm between projects and, I need to walk away, I would normally go to my phone and go on Twitter.
Yeah.
And again, these things are designed just to agitate you and get you in this perpetual state of alertness. And so I thought, no, that's off, and I'm going to pick up the guitar instead, and I'll practice a couple of things, and at least I'm doing something that's for the good of myself.
And that is, in all essence, full self-awareness. Is, as I mentioned many times on the show, that's the reason why I'm not on social media. Actually, I felt that the socials like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, that actually they contributed to my negative mental health, because not just because of constant overwhelm, but toxicity and lots of different things. This constant connection kind of thing. I've removed all the games from my phone a long time ago for that exact reason, because especially if you're watching something with adverts, you just pick up in between. Why can I not just focus and switch off it? And even, I'm not going to lie, right to the right of me, I've got my kind of PlayStation gaming set up here, but I try to do like an hour a day or something. So I think especially in that kind of more virtual world now, because it's still interesting, even with my speaking bookings going into next year, it's only 50% in person still. So there is going to be more virtual and hybrid working going on. So I don't want to be sat at this screen all day, just to be sat at this screen all night, that kind of thing. But I love that. I love your story. I love what you share. I love the way that you share it as well. Thank you. I mean,
Thanks, mate.
You do know if you get good at tennis, like if you actually like ever turn pro, that you'll suddenly stop being Scottish and you'll be British then. That's the only way it works.
Listen, there's very little chance of that happening. I was
I'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
I joined like this local informal league, and honestly, I think I'm 15th in this league out of 17 or 18, and I'm playing against these people who've played for 20, 25 years, and they've soon realised if they just hit it side to side, Steve will run after it because he's watched Andy Murray for 15 years, and he will chase after everything, and he'll be exhausted after 10 minutes.
Well, on the plus side, you're making 14 people above you very happy. So,
well, that's one way to look at it.
So a question I love to ask everybody on this show, and your answer will form part of the playlist at the end of the season. I'm going to set the scene. I am now the MC of the O2 Arena in London. 20,000 people have paid our hard-earned money to come and hear you speak. I'm just about to call you to the stage. You're in the green room relaxing. You hear your walk-on music kick in, and that is a song that motivates you, that lifts you, that just gets you really pumped up to deliver at peak state. What would your track be, Steve?
It would be, because it's got an incredible riff to open with. It's a band from Dunfermline, where I grew up. I've been a Dunfermline Athletic fan for all my life. There's a mental health joke in there following a lower league Scottish football team, but it's Into the Valley by the Skids. Nice. Nobody could not be motivated by that being the entrance music for anybody. So
that is a tune. I'm very excited to get that on the playlist. Steve Nelson, big round of applause. Absolute star. Thank you very much for being on the show, Steve. It's been a real pleasure to have you on. Hopefully we'll get you back for a future season, see where you're going then and how the tennis career is going. So
nice one. I'm sure I'll be doing well, but we'll maybe not mention the tennis.
Yeah. And for everybody else, thank you so much for tuning into today's show. This is available on YouTube and your podcast provider of your choice. In the meantime, I'll be back to you next Friday with a brand new episode with another amazing person to bring you. And in the meantime, take care, stay happy, be well. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. Bye. And that's a wrap. A big thank you for tuning into today's episode. Please do leave us a like and hit subscribe for the fantastic upcoming episodes that I will be bringing to you, featuring more amazing guests. But for now, be well, be happy, be safe, and remember, as I always say, it's what you do next that counts. Until next time on the Nick Elston Show, take care. I'll see you soon. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.